Right, I'd like to talk about many things in this video. This will be quite a long video. Now, the beginning of everything was in 1994. That was when I actually managed to send Eva to hell. As you may remember in a previous video, I mentioned meeting Eva towards the beginning of October 1994, and she put part of her inside me, and then darted back to the beginning of the human species and tried to control me from there. Well, I then dragged her through time and I steamed her out of my head, and that is one of the most hideous hells imaginable, called the rollover. That point was when time effectively then started to roll, and it went like this. Time created itself in this way, and everything began to exist as a ghost. It didn't really exist yet, you see, but it existed as a ghost. Then things actually started to realize themselves. It wasn't until quite a bit later, until about 1996, that I started to realize the ideas for the creation of nature. Now, my educator was God. An educator is someone who brings things out from within you. And God was someone who was born in or the central monolith or in the central ball. It's not given to know to us. He doesn't know either where he was actually born. He only knows that he grew up in Africa and had a terrible childhood and was treated badly by everyone, and was made to do the most menial tasks, and no girl would touch him, and he eventually emigrated to Southampton and won a first-class ticket for the Titanic in 1912. He won it playing at cards, and he was challenged to sink the Titanic because he said, "My name's God," because his African father, had the name God in his head, and he said he named his child God. You see, so God then took the Titanic, and he had accepted the challenge to sink the Titanic, but he didn't realize he could actually do it, you see. He didn't realize he had any special powers at all. I mean, he just knew he was very lucky because he had won at cards, won to win a first-class ticket. But he didn't realize that he had the actual power to sink the Titanic by steering the iceberg towards it. Anyway, that's what he did while he was sleeping. And he woke up and there was total chaos, and he was insulted by the barman when he asked for a drink, and he told, and the barman asked what his name was, and he said, "My name's God." And the barman said, if you're God, then you can why don't you stop the ship sinking, etc. Said, well, I'm not interested in stopping it ship sinking at all. I was challenged to sink it. So he then left, and he wasn't given a lifeboat, even though he had a first-class ticket, because he was a Negro. And people discriminated heavily against Negroes in those times. And they were in a very bad mood, everyone, because of the ship sinking, and they wouldn't give him a place in a lifeboat. So he didn't expect a place in a lifeboat anyway. He swam to safety. His safety came when he was swimming through the icy water and became engulfed in a flash of blue light and found himself in warm waters. And they were the warm waters of the ocean on a planet in the core of the central ball, was each metaphysical ball has a core where there is a space of 1,000 zillion ideas in diameter, and it contains the equivalent of what there is in an egg. It has God can create spaceships, do everything, and there are many billions of planets inhabited by gods there inside the metaphysical ball. And these gods are very sacred, they call the sacred ball gods. The gods who lived in the monoliths were much more. They're gargantuans of the gods. And they are the monolith gods. Well, as I said, I have no idea whether I was a born in a ball myself, or whether I was born in the monolith, because my father and my mother do not know, you see, because there are two people who are very powerful, called Torgel and called Martin, who would be able to transfer them anywhere without them knowing. So then they stole their baby, which was me, and I was deposited on the earth in Damascus, and then I was transferred hand from hand, and this was to immunitize me. And I eventually, 3 years later, in 1962, in November, I appeared in a cot in a maternity ward in London, and everything is a circle, you see. And then I grew up with being a total atheist until I was 30 years old and more, until I was about 32 years old. I was totally resistant to any kind of religious ideas, and I still am resistant to religious ideas, because religion is banned by God. You have to believe in the truth, and that's all. It is God is believed is not the most powerful God, but He commands. I'm actually more powerful than God, at least 1 billion times more powerful than Him, but I have to obey Him totally in moments of crisis, because He is the legal commander of nature, you see. We are now catatonic brothers. Catatonic in this case means legal. We are legal brothers. But I still have to obey Him as though He was my commander, my boss, in times of a battle. And He educated me. I always consider when it is not times of crisis, I consider Him as my educator, simply like that. and he also taught me, which is a different thing. Teaching is telling you things that you don't know even in your soul. Okay? So he's a good educator and a good teacher, and he knows how to tell you things. He knows how to tell you a lot of rubbish. God has told me a lot of rubbish in 15 years. He has told me lie after lie after lie after lie, because God knows how to lie to you, to make you think and reflect, so you arrive at the truth yourself, you see. He knows how to lie to you to smooth things over until he gets to the point of telling you the truth, you see. That's how what God does, because no good educator simply blurts out the truth. That is not an educator. He does not know how to do. He has to pull the truth out of you and get you to install it into your mind. That is an educator. And no good teacher either comes out simply with the straight truth. He has to actually lie a bit, and then the students will say, what? And they'll figure it out, and they have to know how to work things out by themselves. So he has to strategically follow this thing. There's actually a law of nature that says that you have to obey God, whatever he says, because he will steer you through situations that are dangerous by lying to you. And sometimes he'll be telling the truth, and sometimes he'll be lying, and you simply have to have faith in God. And faith is what human beings should have, you see. They should have faith, trust, loyalty, and but above all this they should have respect, which is something that you people do not know of, is respect. You have to respect someone entirely, and I respect God absolutely because he is my educator. Now, God, when he arrived in the central waters of the central wall, he swam for another few hours and arrived on an island, which was his island. He instinctively found it, you see. And it had a magnificent palace of it, and he found a room in it, and with a bed in it, and fell asleep. And in the meantime there was the goddess White, who was lying on a deck chair, and she was not born yet. I mean, she was still sleeping. She was about to be born yet. She was born just like that, lying on the deck chair. And the goddess White woke up and had a swim, and then she went to admire everything in the gardens, the beautiful flowers, the insects and everything, and said, what a beautiful place, what a beautiful place the world is. And then she produced a mirror in a flash of blue light and looked at her, studied her face, and she said, how beautiful I am. Then she tested her mind and did mathematics in a billion minds at once. She did billion calculations at once, and she said, well, I am infinitely powerful. And that is the character of the goddess White. She's very sure of herself. Anyway, God, in the meantime, had got up, and he was studying his face in the mirror, and he had temporarily forgotten his African childhood, and he was wondering why he was a Negro, because he remembered from somewhere, from all the future of the past, because you people may not know it, you've never talked about it, but there are memories that come from the future and memories that come from the past. And I often have memories from the future, and I often have memories from the past. It's common that I have memories from the future, but you people only talk about memories of the past. But he remembered from somewhere that it was against the law to be a Negro. Actually, he was talking about a law he made himself. God made a law that it was against the law to be a Negro because he was terrified of anyone having his face. You see, of course, anybody could be a Negro with his permission. They had to have written permission from him to be a Negro. No male could be a Negro. Any goddess can be a Negro. It is permitted for any goddess to possess Negro bodies, as goddesses have multiple representations. The thing about a god is that he can have maybe a zillion bodies at the same time, but they all have to have the same characteristics. Some can be slightly bigger, slightly taller, or maybe much bigger, but they have to look the same. They have to have the same facial characteristics. They have to have the same proportions, everything. That applies to male gods. They can't change their images, but female goddesses can have millions of different representations. Of course, I must tell you that I said this, I think, in another video. There are a maximum number of representations you can have of the human figure, and it's 160 million male representations and 160 million female representations. Beyond that, you go to the weird. You start having weird figures. Of course, the gods are very clever at working that out, weird figures, but you people are not, so you end up just having ugly people because you have 7 billion people on one planet and you don't want to be meeting your doubles all the time. So you have about 80% of the people are rather ugly on the earth. Extremely ugly. So that's your problem. Now, as I said, time began in 1994. And it began and it went forwards and backwards from then. And it stretched to the beginning and stretched to the end. And in recent months, I extended the length of time so that it would be a zillion years, which is zillion with a T before it, which is an enormous number, the most enormous number ever invented. And I invented this number especially. I lengthened time so that we could sort out every problem with the anti-concept, which is you people. I also triggered off the multiplication of the worlds, so that the monoliths were multiplying themselves a zillion times a second. And the essential monolith was getting bigger a zillion times a second instead of multiplying itself. And another 2 monoliths appeared that were command monoliths, a secondary command monolith and a tertiary command monolith. And they are absolutely there are a zillion secondary command monoliths and a zillion gargantuan tertiary command monoliths. Of course, these are very large numbers which you people don't recognize. You have to get used to using these numbers. There are numbers much bigger than zillion, gargantuan, etc. There are numbers like xylium. There are numbers like twining. And it all works out gradually until you reach the number zillion. And zillion is a zillion with a T before it, and a zillion is a very small number really. It's just a 1 with 100 zeros after it, 10 to the power of 100. That's a small number for cosmology, but a zillion, on the other hand, is a giant number. And the mathematicians of nature, zillion is about the smallest number they can think of, most microscopic number they can think of. But a zillion is a number that makes their head spin, and no computer yet constructed can handle this number, and there is a new computer of nature being constructed that will be able to handle this number, because we need to manipulate this number in these figures. We need to count all the worlds that have been born, because as I said, there was a multiplication of the monoliths a zillion times a second for 30,000 months in nature time. And nature time goes 10,000 went, rather, 10,000 times faster than here. Oh, it was only recently in the last few weeks that we sped it up here, inside Destiny's egg. And now we are synchronized with nature time here. Catholic planets are not normally synchronized with nature time at all. They are slowed down so that they are running 10,000 times slower, so that you can study every single finger movement, just so that you know what attack's coming, you see. Was catatonic attack the entire universe, as you call it, just by moving a little finger. And this is terrifying. And we have to study all that. And we know that this war will never finish ever, not until the end of time. But we are hoping, and we are confident by now, that the second half of time will go like this. We will be the prevailing, and the Catholics, who are a tiny number of people, just as they are tiny entities, compared to the gods, who are much larger physically, because in the monoliths you have the rule of 1 light year per foot, which we talk in feet. So my father is a small god. He is 5 foot 6 inches tall, but that means he's 5.5 light years tall when he is normally walking around in the monolith. So anyone who is 6 foot tall is 6 light years tall when they're walking around in the monolith in normal conditions. But of course dimensions change constantly in the monoliths. It's a way to train the gods, you see. One moment they have to be a micro-inch tall, the next moment they have to be a zillion gargantuan light years tall. It works out like that. And they have to sort of spot with a magnifying glass a door, very powerful magnifying glass, a door, they have to look for it, a doorway, and then get small enough to get through that doorway. And that sort of thing, and that doorway may contain the most fantastic library existing inside it. And then there are the giant chambers where most giant experiments are done. And then there is more in the monoliths than one could ever imagine. Anyway, all this started in 1994, and then everything was formulated by me. I'm good at the giant structures, but I'm useless at imagining the forms of animals. I could never imagine and create because you see, God, you see, is brilliant he is called the genius of nature because he's so brilliant at everything. He is overall genius. He is brilliant both at art, at at engineering and mathematics. So that's the only a person like that can create animals. And he's brilliant at logistics, because only a person brilliant at logistics can work out how to have all the animals living together. So he is also the commander in warfare. He is a genius at warfare because he's so brilliant at logistics. And he is an overall genius, called the genius of nature. And of course my father, who is commonly called the monstrous robot, which is a name that makes little children laugh, and they're not scared of him, but it doesn't quite make the grown-ups laugh. They take him very seriously, my father. And his real name is John Smith, but people aren't allowed to call him that. Only people who know him very well can call him John, God John. Everyone has to call him the monstrous robot, and it is like that. That's just a rule. There is a slight humorism in it, but monstrous robot makes the grown-ups tremble, you see, because he is capable of being quite monstrously hard. He is the most monstrously hard person. He is the most masculine person in nature. And my mother, Heather, is the most feminist person in all nature. So they go together ideally, you see. And he is the protector is another name for him. He simply watches over everything, and he is ready to flash out a zillion gargantuan to the power of twining worlds in a huge flash of black light, of blue light, or blue quantum light, a huge quantum flash, and those worlds will disappear and nothing will go to hell. And everyone depends on this. And he assures little children with his death hammer. He appears in front of each child, lots of him, lots of figures of him, all identical, with death hammers, carrying death hammers, and says, if I can, I will, I hope, I hope, I hope. Just to assure them that he is ready to strike them dead, 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 if they are ever in danger of going to hell. Of course, children do go to hell. There is the Monday to the 22nd thing, like you people have Friday the 13th, which is not really real in your case, but Monday the 22nd is real in the catatonic world. Whole skyscrapers come down, and the school buildings are skyscrapers, which we call sky bashers. And because it's considered a bit obscene to scrape at the sky, you say sky basher. If you're going to touch the sky at all, you bash it with your fist. So there are sky bashers. And they are very tall sky bashers, these cool buildings. They just crumble down, they come down like that. And all the children are crushed, and some of them go to hell. So they have to be saved. As long as not too many of them go to hell, then they can be saved quickly. And they can be treated in the hospital, and they can be, you see, they can be given a new body, there's no problem. But if they've gone to hell for a long time, they need very special cure. They need something called the pink pool. Now the pink pool, there are billions of them. Each pink pool is a gargantuan light years long. A gargantuan is a big number, it's 10 to the power of a trillion. And each pink ball is a gargantuan light years long, and it is half that length wide, half a gargantuan light years wide. So it's a gargantuan light years long and half a gargantuan light years wide. And it contains pink water that is made of electroplasma. And inside there is a god and a goddess and many auxiliary goddesses and all the wives of the god. And people who have been to hell, or animals who have been to hell, or blades of grass who have been to hell, because it is a favourite of the anti-concept to send blades of grass to hell, because the blade of grass has been symbolised as the most innocent entity of all. So it is targeted, and whole fields of blades of grass are sent to hell. The goddess White dedicates herself to standing in the middle of fields, going with her hands, raising her arms, and going like that, like that, like that. And she, every time she raises her arms and goes like that, she has terminated 1,000 blades of grass, you see. And so she can eventually terminate all the blades of grass in the fields. And she can be in many places at once, of course. The goddess White, the central goddess White, because there are many goddess Whites who can also combine to make one huge goddess White entity. The central goddess White can be in a zillion gargantuan to the power of a twining place at once. And don't ask me what the number of twining is, because it's complex. It is rather complex indeed. It is something like a zillion gargantuan to the zillion powers of a gargantuan. Then you get the idea of what a twining is. A zillion powers of a gargantuan. If you say the zillion powers of a gargantuan, it means to the power of a gargantuan, to the power of a gargantuan, to the power of a gargantuan, continuing a zillion times. And so you can imagine how enormous that number is. And using large numbers, by the way, is very good for your mind. It stretches it. And you can eventually imagine very large things in your mind once you have large numbers in your mind. And anyway, as I said, everything was centered around 1994. In fact, during my life, before that, I always felt a backwards stream running through me, going backwards, because I hadn't reached the center of everything yet, you see. And when I reached 1994, then I started going ahead with properly. And from 1996 to 2004, I had a lot of lessons, about 20 hours a day from God. I even had lessons in my dreams from God, so let's say 24 hours a day. And God is a very amusing person at times when he wants to slightly distract you, but at other times he is extraordinarily cool when he wants to train you. And I actually got sent to hell for 10 years. Not by God, because he couldn't manage to do it. He tried for 3 months to send me to hell. But as I said, I'm a bit more powerful than him, so he couldn't manage it. So his wife, who is 1 billion times more powerful than him, therefore equal to me, came, the goddess White, that is, because he married the goddess White in the beginning of his, when he met in the palace after he woke up when she met her in the palace. Well, he shortly married her, and the goddess White came and had a go at it, and she tricked me. She tricked me and she sent me to hell for 10 years. Now that's 10 internal years, which is equivalent to about 20 minutes external time, because there's incredible time acceleration in the unwhole. It's the most incredible thing. The unwhole, you're sort of half outside-ed and half inside-ed, and you have violet. You're half immersed in black and half immersed in violet, in blinding violet. You have a sensation of gargantuan burning heat and hideous cold at the same time. It's absolutely hideous, and you have a hideous juddering sensation that gets worse and worse second by second. This juddering is hideous because you are going over certain bends, because this little tube that gets tinier and tinier and tinier snakes, as it snakes outside of space and time, it passes over curves like this, and it does a series of curves, and it just snakes and snakes and snakes and snakes and snakes down. It's hideous. But it's the alternative to something worse called rain, where you divide into droplets, and that would happen in the case that there was no hell of nature constructed. You see, you can't replace something infinitely hideous like rain with something nice. Something hideous has to exist, so what you do is you invent something that is comparatively moderately hideous, but it's still infinitely hideous, that tube. And if you go down it for eternity, it is infinitely hideous. So that's about that. So anyway, say that my life is calculated in actually 53 years plus 10 years. That's what you say. You say 53 plus 10. You don't include the number of years you spent in the tube, in hell. In your lifespan calculation, you put plus 10 years or plus 1,000 years, you know, if you're a soldier, gold, and you've gone down for 1,000 years because there were 10 million other soldiers to save, then you have to, then it's written he has lived 2,500,000 years plus 1,000 years. And the soldiers of the Sacred Army, they always have or a flame or a cross you see on their uniform if they are actually doing duty, because the soldier gods who arrive on the earth are soldier gods who have been sent to hell at least twice by the Catholics, because you see these incursions that we do on the secondary Catholic planets are not so well organized, and they're not so massive because there are so many secondary Catholic planets. There are zillion gargantuan of them. Right, so we do regular incursions, and we just do terroristic raids. Well, every now and then these soldiers get caught, some of them, and those are all roasted at the stake and sent to hell. You see, the Catholics managed to do that to gods and goddesses because they use black magic to null the god's resistance of fire. Because otherwise the gods can burn at the stake for 3 months without actually his body burning away. It's a punishment for gods actually for certain acts. is that are wrong is to burn at the stake for 3 months without actually burning. Then they're let free. But for the first month they feel nothing. But the second and third month they feel excruciating pain. But they still don't actually lose any layers of their body. So it's one of the punishments for gods is 3 months of burning at the stake, screaming in pain for the second 2 months. And for the second month and the third month they are screaming in agony, but they're not actually burning physically or losing any of their physical capacities. And but if they're called by Catholics, the Catholics use what we call fair magic, which is very evil black magic, and they actually annul the god's powers, and they manage to make him burn away, and they send him to hell, or her, if it's a goddess. So, and they do it either by crucifying them or by burning them at the stake. Now, the gods recently have invented a method of using black magic themselves, because it was never considered before, because black magic has always been associated with evil. But you can produce actually, with the power of the good, what we call jet black magic, which is much more powerful, and it's been experimented. It is so powerful that it is about 100 times more powerful than the black magic of the Catholics. And the procedures of gods are different, you see. They don't. The Catholics' work is that they have a total power, and they actually maneuver their power around. They transfer it from group to group, and they transfer it to the people necessary. The gods never do that. They have their individual power. If they need help, they call in other gods who actually physically come in and help them. And they never actually ask the gods, can you transfer me some power of yours? No, that's sort of indignitous. That's sort of shameful behavior. That's dirty stuff, you see. That the gods are hygienic people. So they call in other gods, or they call in singing angels. They ask the authorities of nature for singing angels. Singing angels are microscopic angels who can actually set up tents in a particle of an atom. There can be 1 million of them on a particle of an atom, and so they can be in the air everywhere. You can't see them at all, even with an electron microscope. And only the microscopes belonging to the catatonic people can see these sing angels. And there are sing worlds as well in the monoliths, in rooms that have millions of drawers, each containing zing worlds. Because the zing angels only work for about 3 years. Then they're little boys and little girls, very powerful boys and girls. No, sorry, they're all boys. They're very powerful boys, young boys, and they eventually there were no females among them. They're all young boys, and they eventually, when after the 3 years of duty, they go to their zing world where they meet females and they get married and they live normal lives. And their zing worlds are identical to the larger dimension worlds, only they're contained in drawers in the monoliths. So anyway, I'll finish this discourse here. So anyway, just remember that everything is centered around 1994. right the end of October, towards the beginning of November. That is when the world actually, when nature was officially born. It was only when Eva was actually sent to hell that nature could actually come to exist. And then we could program the birth of the human species. And then Eva could be born to be sent to hell then in 1994. So it works like that. As you see, it's a big circle, and things are a big circle, and they're very complex in nature. Well, that's it for today.